Daf Nun Amud Beis, the first line on the top. We were learning previously the Machlokes Rav and Shmuel that if a person says that shvisasi under a tree without defining exactly where under the tree, so according to Rav, he loses his Makam Shvisa from where he's standing because he's relinquished that. He says he wants a Shvisa to be under the tree. But since he has not defined anywhere under the tree, then he doesn't have a Makam Shvisa under the tree because it's not a defined place. So therefore, he can only move, he only has Dalet Amas. He can't move beyond the Dalet Amas that he is, where he's standing. According to Shmuel, however, he says, even though he doesn't have a defined place under the tree, but it's somewhere under the tree. So therefore, the Shvisa is under the tree. It's just that you have to be machmir. You don't know where under the tree. So it perhaps is on the furthest extreme to one side, where you count the 2,000 amas, or the furthest extreme to the other side. So therefore, you have to be machmir, and if he's going in either direction or in any direction, he has to be machmir and assume that perhaps the shvisa is on the furthest extreme to the other side, and he measures from the furthest extreme of under the tree to the other side. And so too, if he's going, for instance, if he's going to the north, he has to measure the 2,000 amas from the furthest extreme of the tree to the south. And if he's going to the south, he has to measure the furthest extreme of the tree to the north. So now discussing Rav Shita, Amra by Eloishana El Beilan Shetachta Yud Beisama. Where is it that Rav said that you don't have any defined place under the tree since you haven't defined the place, and therefore you're not going to shvisa at all? That's only if in the tree, the width of the tree has 12 amas or more underneath it. But in a tree that doesn't have 12 amas underneath it, then it is considered to be sufficiently nicker, because if you have less than 12 amas under the tree, then the middle 4 amas will overlap any one side of it. So if you have the area that's less than 12 amas, if you take the middle 4 amas, well, if that middle 4 amas, the 4 amas to the one side overlaps that middle 4 because there's less than 12. So if you take 4 in the middle, that means that there's less than 4 on each side, because there's a total of less than 12. So therefore, part of the 4 amas to the one side overlaps the middle, and part of the 4 amas to the other side overlaps the middle. So therefore, that means that the dalet amas in the middle certainly is on either side of it. So therefore, part of that dalet amas of the middle section is certainly included in whichever makam he is, his makam shvisa is. The 4 middle amas, that 4 dalet amas section in the middle, part of it is certainly on one of the areas where his makam shvisa is. So therefore, it's considered to be sufficiently defined, because the 4 amas in the middle, that 4 amas section, part of it is certainly within the makam shvisa. So he says, part of the base is nicker, and therefore it's considered to be sufficiently defined, and therefore he would be kind of shvisa under the tree. So in there, he would be moided to Shmuel that he's kind of shvisa under the tree. We don't know where exactly under the tree, but he would be kind of shvisa under the tree, and therefore it's like Shmuel says, it's a chamer gamal. You have to be machmir to where you measure from, but he is kind of shvisa from the area under the tree. No, how do you know that his area, defined area, is in the middle? Maybe it's to one side or the other side. Meaning, yes, it's true that the dalet amas section of the middle certainly will overlap each side. But what is the significance of the dalet amas middle section? Yes, if you carve out dalet amas from the middle, part of that dalet amas section is certainly within the shvisa. But what is the significance of that dalet amas middle section? If his tchum of his makam shvisa is meant to be to the one side, it's to, for instance, to the north, it's to the north. If it's to the south, it's to the south. The fact that if you arbitrarily carve out a middle section and you say that part of that middle section is certainly within the north or the south Dalet Amas is meaningless Itainas because his Tchum might not be in the middle of the tree, and if his Malkam Shvisa is to the one side or to the other, the fact that they're middle Amas that you've arbitrarily designated falls within that Tchum has no relevance. It doesn't have any meaning because if his Malkam Shvisa is not in the Dalet Amas section of the middle, then it's meaningless that that Dalet Amas section in the middle is in the Tchum on one side or the other. It really has no relevance because if he's not kind of Shvisa under that area, then it in itself doesn't have any meaning. And therefore it's not considered a Mokum Mesuyim, the fact that if you take a Dalet Amas section in the middle, it would be part of it would be part of his Tchum on either side. So he says that's not considered to be a Malkam Mesuyim. Ella Amar Avon Beit Yeshua, but he does define it, he does qualify it. He says, Loishan Ella Be'ilan Shein Takta, Be'ilan Shetakta Chesamas. When does Rav say that it's not considered a Malkam Mesuyim under the tree and he's not kind of Shvis at all? That's if the area under the tree is 8 Amars or more. Then you have no Malkam Mesuyim. You don't have a defined area. Ava Be'ilan Shetakta Zayin Amars. But if you have an Elon, which is less than 8, which is Zion, Hari mixes base and Nicker, then certainly part of the area is under the Tchum. Because if there's only 7 or less Amas, if you take 4 Amas to the one side, then you'll say 4 Amas to the one side, 1 Amma, let's say 4 Amas to the north, well, the 1 Amma of that, the Amma that's furthest to the south is within the Dalet Amas of the southern section. And if you take Dalet Amas to the south, the Amma that's on the northernmost part of that section is within the Dalet Amas of the northern part of it. So certainly there is an overlap, no matter which way you draw the Dalet Amas, whether it's to the one side or to the other side, for instance, to the north or the south, it's certainly in any event one of those Amas are going to be overlap and be within his Tchum. So you certainly know that 1 Amma is now definitely in the Tchum. If you take Dalet Amas, for instance, to the north, the southernmost Amma is within the Tchum. And if you take Dalet Amas to the north, the entire Dalet Amas, so the Amma that's to the south is within the Tchum. If you take Dalet Amas to the south, then you also have that the Dalet Amas, which is the northernmost part of that section, which is the southern Amma of the Dalet Amas to the north, is also in the Tchum. So you know certainly that there is an Amma which is definitely in the Tchum. So therefore, that's considered to be enough. A Malkam Mesuyim, that's considered to be defined. Tanya Gavasi the Rav, Tanya Gavasi the Shmuel. We have a brisa that supports both Rav and Shmuel. Tanya Gavasi the Rav, Mishba B'derech L'chashla, a person who was traveling and it became dark, and now he can't get home before Shabbos. V'yamakir Elon Agadar, and he recognized that there was a tree or a fence. So Amar Shvisasi Tachta, and he said that my Malkam Shisa should be under it. It should be under the tree, under the fence. Leimer Klum. If he hasn't defined it, he hasn't said anything. But if he says my Malkam Shisa should be in a particular place, and he defined the place, and it's a Malkam Mesuyim, it's defined, he can travel till he gets to that Malkam Mesuyim, and once he gets to that place, the Mahalach has Kula v'chutz Mama, and he can travel to that place and beyond it 2,000 amas. When is it said, that's only if he designated a Malkam Mesuyim to be his Malkam Shvisa. If he was Shavis on a tel, a mound which is 10 Tfachim high. So that's a Malkam Mesuyim, it's a mound, and it has its defined areas on the 4 sides of it, which are 10 Tfachim high. V'hu midalet amas ad beis hasayim. As long as it's dalet amas, it's a mokum chashuv, but it can't be more than a beis hasayim because since it's loy hukaf ladira, it hasn't been fenced in for residential purposes. If it's more than a beis hasayim, he can't. If it's more than 5,000 square amas, he can't carry in that area. So it has to be a place where he can carry to. So therefore, if it is on a mound that's 10 tefachim high, so the four sides of the mound are considered to be like machitzas, it's a defined area, as long as the area is not less than dalet tefachim, but not more than a beis hasayim, that's a defined area. He can go from his makam shvisa to the mound as long as it's within 2,000 tefachim, and he can go from the mound another 2,000 tefachim in the other direction. V'chein bikashi amuka yud, or if there's a valley that's 10 deep. And again, v'imi dalet amas v'beis hasayim. And again, the same principle. If it's 10 deep, it also has the walls surrounding it. It's a makam masuyim, as long as it's not less than dalet tefachim, not more than a beis hasayim. Aval b'makam she'in masuyim, but if it's not a defined area, ein lo ela dalet amas. Then he only has dalet amas. He can't go more than dalet amas. If there are two travelers, one knows a defined place in Makam Masuyim, but the other one doesn't. The one that doesn't know of one, he makes a shaliach, he makes the other person a shaliach for him, and he said the one who does recognize says my shisa should be in that certain defined place, and he's a shaliach for the one that's in a makir. Now, when do we say that he has a shvisa on this place, where the place that he designates when he defined an area of dalet amas? But if he did not define the area, he did not define the area of the dalet amas that he wants his makam shvisa to be, he cannot move. He's stuck in his place. So that shows clearly, like Rab, that shows that if he has a makam masuyim, which is dalet amas, or a fenced-in area which is treated as dalet amas, if he has that defined area, then we say he's kind of shvisa under that place, and he has alpay mama in each direction from that makam masuyim. But if he designated a place that he wants his makam shvisa, but it's not a makam masuyim, he was not masayim the dalet amas, he can't move because he relinquished the shvisa in the place that he's standing, and he's not been kind of shvisa in the place he designated because it's not a makam masuyim. So you see clearly a raya to Lemit Havityev to Shmuel, frankly more. Well, shouldn't this brisa be a kash on Shmuel? Amar Lach Shmuel, Shmuel says, Hachmai Eskinan, Ki Gain Deika, Mimokam Ragla Vadikra, Tre Alpha, Va'arba Garmida. Di Maikmas Le, Be'irach Gisa Di Ilan, Kam Le, Labar Mitchuma. So Shmuel says, no, the reason over here that we say Lo Yazaz Mekaima, that he can't move, is not because if he has not designated a Makam Masuyim under the tree, that he's not been koine shis under the tree. That's not the pshat. Over here, where we say that if he hasn't designated a dalet amas section under the tree or under the fenced area, under the fence rather, that he can't move, because over here we're talking that if from the place that he's standing to the furthest extreme of the edge of the tree, it's more than 2,004 amas, 2,000 amas, or 2,004 amas, or more. It's not less than 2,004 amas, which means, therefore, that according to Shmuel, the brisa, he is kind of shvisa under the tree. It's just that we don't know where under the tree. So therefore, perhaps he's kind of shvisa on the area under the tree, which is to the furthest extreme, which is the furthest away from where he's standing. Now, if that area under the tree, the furthest area is 2,004 amas or more away, he can't get to that area. Because even if that was his intent, that that's where the tchum should be, and even if he's kind of a shvisa under the tree, but if his intent is that it should be on that furthest extreme, that area to the furthest extreme, then it's not accessible to him because it's more than 2,004 amas away, so he can't reach it. And a tchum, a Malkum Shvisa, an Eruv, which is not accessible to the person on the onset of Shabbos. If it's not accessible to him, it's not a tchum. He's not kind of Shvisa. It's not a valid Eruv. It's not a valid Eruv if it's not accessible to him on the onset of Shabbos. Now, since we don't know where under the tree he's kind of Shvisa, so again, according to Shmuel, it's not that he's not kind of Shvisa under the tree. He is kind of, we don't know where. And perhaps the Malkum Shvisa is the area that's to the furthest extreme. It's furthest away. And if that is the case, it's not accessible to him. He can't reach it because it's 2004 or more amos away from him. That's why he's not kind of. So Dimax will be Idach Gisa Dilan, if you put it on the furthest extreme of the tree, the opposite side of the tree, it's outside his tchum. So therefore, Isim Dalet Amas Matziyazel. So if he designated a 4 Amas section, so we know that where he designated the area is within his tchum, it's accessible to him, then Matziyazel, he can go to it. But if he didn't designate any particular Dalet Amas area, perhaps the Dalet Amas that he's kind of Shvisa is on the furthest extreme of the tree. It's the furthest away, where it's not accessible. He can't get to it. So that's how Shmuel will learn this brisa. Tanya Kavasik to Shmuel, we have another brisa that supports Shmuel. Brisa says, is a person mistakenly thought he can make an Erev in two different directions. He mistakenly believed that he could. Or he told his servants, make an Erev for me. And one did it to the north direction and one to the south direction. So what happens? It's not a defined area. It has an Erev in two separate directions. So now, and that's similar to what we have over here, where he made the Erev under the tree, but he didn't say where. So the Erev is somewhere within that area. It's perhaps to the north, it's perhaps to the south, but we don't know where. So what the Bryce says, Mahal L'Sofen, Keruv L'Darim. He is kind of Shvisa between these two areas. We don't know where, so he can only walk to the north. He can only walk to the north direction if you count 2,000 amas, if the Erev would be to the south. So if the Erev is to the south, you'd have to measure 2,000 amas in each direction, so you'd measure 2,000 amas to the north. Now, if he wants to go to the north, he can't measure 2,000 amas from the northern Erev, because maybe the southern Erev is the one that's really his Erev. So he has to measure 2,000 amas from here. So for instance, if there's 1,000 amas between them, he loses 1,000 amas. He can only go 1,000 amas north of the north Erev, 2,000 amas of the south one, because maybe that's his Erev. Now if he wants to go to the south, he can't measure 2,000 amas from the south Erev, because maybe the north is the Erev. He has to measure 2,000 amas from the north. So he loses 1,000 amas in this example to the south, and he can only go 2,000 amas from the north here. That's what we say he does. So he is kind of Shvisa. We don't say that since it's not a defined area, he's not kind of Shvisa at all. But it's like Shmuel says, a Chamer Gamel. So Mahal Chutzofen, Keruv L'Darim, and L'Darim, Keruv L'Tzofen. But if they stretch them between the two, and they stretch it between the two extremes, and they don't overlap at all in the middle, meaning that they're 2,000 amas apart, then he can't move from his place, because in either which way you measure, in either direction rather, which you measure, you have to now take into account it might be to the opposite direction, and if they're now 2,000 amas apart, then you have to be machmer in each direction. He can't move. He can't go from his place. So I'll call what do you see over here? You see over here clearly, like Shmuel, that he is kind of tchum. He's kind of the Erev in this undefined area, even though it's not clearly defined. It's not Masuyim, but he is kind of there. We just don't know where. And you have to be machmer and count to 2,000 amas from each direction and be machmer on it. So you see clearly, like Shmuel Lamed. So frag the Gemara. Let us say this is a kash on Rav. Rav Moore says, Rav Tanu Pali. It's true that this brisa is not like Rav. It's true that this argues on Rav, but Rav has a status of a Tana, and he can argue with it, and he argues with this brisa, So the opinion of Rav is not like this brisa, and he holds that if it's not a makom suyim, you're not kind of a erev at all under that area, under the tree.